It's Donald Trump, and if you don't like it, deal with it. That's the news going into New Hampshire. Really, that's been the news since Donald Trump announced that he was running for re-election once again. Look, this guy is going to be the Republican candidate. And the more we see of Joe Biden and the more we see that the Democrats are insistent on Joe Biden being their candidate of choice for 2024, it's going to be Donald Trump in the White House, given elections are fair. That's the topic of today's Bold and Blunt. And I'm your host, Cheryl Chumley, giving you a Christian conservative look at today's news, politics, culture, and events. And before I get into more of this, I want to quickly mention, if you like Bold and Blunt, guess what? You don't have to do a Google search or a Bing search on Bold and Blunt to find it. You can subscribe at WashingtonTimes.com. Just scroll to the bottom of the page, find the newsletter section, click on it, find my newsletter, Bold and Blunt with Cheryl Chumley. Click on that and sign up. Sign up for my Monday, Wednesday, Friday newsletter containing my commentaries that I write at the Washington Times, as well as my Tuesday and Thursday Bold and Blunts. And if you don't want to do that, you may get Bold and Blunt at edify.app. That is your online platform for all your faith-based podcasts. And who doesn't need faith in these dark times, right? You can also get Bold and Blunt at Real Life Network. That is the faith-based news arm of Pastor Jack Hibbs's Calvary Chapel, Chino Hills. I always slur that. I always say Calvary. It's Calvary Chapel, Chino Hills Church. That's out in California. So you can get on Real Life Network. You can get Bold and Blunt there. And guess what? You can get Bold and Blunt wherever podcasts are offered. So Donald Trump for President 2024. There really is no better candidate out there that America needs at this time in history. Why is that? Well, two very big reasons in my mind jump to mind that Donald Trump brings to the table. The first, border control. His stance on border control is exactly what America needs right now. And I know all the Republicans out there all the time talk about border control, but Donald Trump is the one who started building the wall, and he is the one who deported illegals. The left went nuts on it, right? You remember how the left, with their partners in media, went nuts when under Donald Trump, immigration authorities started doing these sweeps across the country and these very public arrests of undocumented workers, as the media likes to call them. Remember CBS News, this headline, July 2019, ICE sweeps pushed by Trump to target undocumented families. In an operation targeting about 2,000 undocumented families with deportation orders, ICE apprehended 35 individuals. Trump's first big immigration op, Voice of America reported in February of 2017, 680 arrested. 680 arrested. Granted, that's not a ton, right? But the thing is, it's the messaging. It's the messaging to those who would come into America that they're not welcome unless they come legally. Right? That's what we want in a president. That's what we need right now. Because the message from Joe Biden, remember when all those illegals crossing the border had Joe Biden t-shirts and they were being welcomed with open arms? That message traveled far and wide very quickly. As a matter of fact, before Joe Biden was even inaugurated, there were reports coming from places south of America's borders that, hey, America's borders are open. Time to pack up the bags and start the trek. So the message was out. The narrative was out there. And when Donald Trump promised to deport illegals, and then he actually did deport illegals, it wasn't just a campaign promise. It was a message to the world. Don't come to America if you're trying to cross into America illegally. And now look, he's making the same promises, right? He's promising on the campaign trail now to deport illegals like never before in history, which is great rhetoric for those who have suffered under the mass inflow of illegals into America. And if you're a taxpayer, you have suffered because some of your tax dollars have gone toward providing for these illegals. And even Democrats, let's be real here, even Democrats are getting sick and tired of having to provide housing and provide shelter and food and assistance to all these illegals who are suddenly flooding their cities, right? New York City. And they're tired of having to deal with what their own party has created, the mess the Democrats have created. Now it's hitting home in Democrat strongholds in areas led by Democrat politicians, and they're feeling the heat. They're facing the fire. They're seeing the crime in their streets, the tents that cover wide swaths of the city, where legal residents, where hardworking American citizens don't even dare walk any longer. So it's a mess out there. And Donald Trump, of course, has a history of promising and fulfilling the promises of deporting illegals. And now he's out there campaigning, saying the exact same thing. So he's got the trust on that. He's got the good people of America trusting that he will indeed do as he said on the border. The second issue that Donald Trump brings to the table is his fight for America First agendas and policies. And it's not just a bumper sticker. It's not just a talking point. Globalists right now are busily steamrolling their agendas through this feckless puppet presidency under Joe Biden. And another 4 years of Democrat control in the White House, no matter who has power in Congress, right? We could have a Democrat in the White House and Republican-controlled House and Senate majorities, but another Democrat in the White House would allow the globalists in Davos that we just saw at the United Nations, at the World Health Organization, the World Economic Forum, to push forth some of their very anti-America, pro-communist, China-loving policies and agendas, despite the will of American people. Because when you have the executive, right, you can do a lot of things through your cabinet members. You can do a lot of things by creating little czars and so forth. You can do things like bypass Congress. Remember, Barack Obama was expert at this. Give me a pen and a cell phone. Who needs Congress? Who needs that silly Constitution? I'm just going to push through an agenda, and then in a couple years, let the courts sort it out. That's the Democrat playbook, right? And that's what will happen with these globalist bodies if another Democrat is in the White House, particularly if Joe Biden is in the White House, because he's already bowed down and bent down and laid prostrate on the ground for all these globalist interests. And, his health just grows worse. And so that weekend at Bernie's type of persona that he now brings to the presidency will just be 4 years at Bernie's, and he'll be paraded out on the stage and given a couple talking points, not too many because he can't really handle more than 1 or 2 note cards at a time, and then he'll trickle off the stage, shuffle off, do the Biden shuffle. No, not this way, Joe, this way. Oh, over here, Joe. Oh, Joe, eyes over here. So that will be the 4 years of a second Joe Biden administration. And it just opens the doors for the globalists to come in and push their policies on America. And specifically, we just need to look at what's coming up in May. And this is before Donald Trump will win the presidency. But this May, we have the World Health Organization trying to push through what's called a pandemic treaty, which, if you look at the text, which I have, and if you read the headlines, which I have, and read the news stories, and read the World Health Organization's own words about it, which I have, it will basically strip America of sovereignty and put the fate of American citizens in the hands of one pinhead at the World Health Organization, the Director General. And how it does this is it allows the World Health Organization's chief to look around the world and determine whether any emerging virus or health threat, read climate change, right? Or any health threat is dire enough to demand immediate response. And if so, deemed by the World Health Organization chief, then will come unleashed a whole flurry of advisements, recommendations, read dictates and mandates on how local governments in that area, on how authorities in that area, on how medical bureaucrats in that particular area ought to respond to this deemed threat. And in order to contain the threat, then will come a flurry of advisements, recommendations, read dictates, mandates to other governments around the world who are participating in this pandemic treaty to enact similar or the same provisions. So we have an example, a real life example of how medical bureaucrats run amok, run drunk on power, handle any type of viral threat, right? Virus threat. We saw it 3+ years under the coronavirus madness, which is still going on. Every time I see somebody walking down a street by themselves wearing a face mask, I feel like slapping them to jolt them back to reality. I know that sounds harsh, but guess what? That's actually a favor. When people are hysterical, when people are going nuts, right? Sometimes they need a good shake to wake them up. And people who are wearing a face mask by themselves, driving in their cars by themselves, walking down the street by themselves, they're living in a fantasy land, and you're doing them a favor. Yep, you're doing them a favor. If you just whack them on the head a little bit and say, hey, the face mask thing is over. It never worked in the first place. I don't know why you're wearing it now. But you're making the rest of humanity look bad, right? You're making us look bad. If you're an American and you're out and about alone, walking down the street by yourself wearing a face mask, you're making America look bad. You're giving America a bad name. So quit it. Anyhow, we've seen under the coronavirus how these medical bureaucrats will indeed address any sort of health threat. And what it means is total top-down control. Total top-down control. Get ready for more lockdowns, more stay-at-home orders, stay off the streets. For God's sakes, do not go out in that fresh air and get fresh air, right? Stay in your home and close all the windows and huddle down in the corner and wait for the stimulus check to come in the mail so you can go buy your daily stipend of veggie beef or insect beef or whatever it is that Bill Gates is packaging out there, and all the farmland he's buying up in America that we're told not to worry about. So this is what is in store if we do not have a strong executive, right? If we do not have a president in the White House who is strong enough to stand up to these SOBs at the global governments who hate America, hate individualism, hate freedom, hate the Western values, and more than anything, hate God-given individual rights and liberties, which is why America has historically been the last country of freedom in the world, because we take our rights from God, we take our liberties from a creator, and we tell government, hey, stand down, you're only there to preserve and protect those rights. You work for me. And the globalists just don't like being told that they work for anybody. They want to be the kings, and they are the elites, they are the 1%ers, and they regard the rest of us as little children needed to be herded into, these fenced-in areas to do as they say, to live as we're told. Because after all, if we're left on our own to make our own decisions, we do things like cut down trees and build homes and drive cars down the road and cook on gas stoves, and God forbid we take an airplane somewhere. And these are all activities that only rightly belong to the 1%ers of the world, right? So look, just to sum up, Donald Trump, border control, because the wider open the borders are, the more we're letting in people who come from nations of socialism and collectivism and communism, who bring all that cancerous rot here in America and demand that our government provide the same as their socialist, communist, collectivist governments. And we don't need any more of that influence in our political arena. And second off, Donald Trump will indeed fight the globalists who are trying to undercut American exceptionalism. And by that, I mean the concept of individual rights coming from God and government only in place to preserve and protect those individual rights. So check, border control, anti-globalism, America first. That's what we need in the next president of the United States, and Donald Trump has a proven record of doing both. Look, if you want to sum up the ideal candidates to vote for this coming election season, it's the candidates who recognize individual rights and liberties come from God. That's it. In a nutshell, when you're in the voting booth, think which candidate brings this, and I guarantee it ain't a Democrat. All right, so my guest today, Steve Malzberg. He is a nationally known TV and radio host, syndicated columnist, and he is so up on what's going on in politics. I'm very excited to discuss what's taking place in America's culture and politics with him. Steve, thank you so much for coming on Bold and Blunt. It is so great to have you here.
It's my pleasure.
I know you are watching with interest how Donald Trump is once again dominating the political scene. What's your takeaway from Iowa, headed into New Hampshire, and where this campaign season is going to lead?
Well, all the guy did was set a record for margin of victory among Republicans in Iowa. And, it's so funny to see not funny, really sad, to see the media coverage afterward about, it's an overrepresented evangelical Christian state. Only 12% of the Republicans voted, blah, 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 and he only got 50% of the people who voted didn't want him. I mean, just, the negativity from the mainstream media is just absurd and insane. But as far as the campaign, look, this guy is, I don't know what he's running on, but it's not empty. And this guy is just, for any age, I don't know where he gets the energy. He goes from Iowa, he goes to New York City for the court thing, and then he goes to New Hampshire, and he's all over the place. He had the report was he didn't sleep in 24 hours, which is the antithesis of Joe Biden, of course. But, I listened to the speeches of Nikki Haley and Governor DeSantis after their losses, and of course you would think that they just hit the lottery and they just won Iowa, and it's a little, it's not unexpected, but it is a little disappointing and just enough already. And of course Nikki Haley is in New Hampshire, and she's going to lose big time in her state, her home state of South Carolina. Look, Trump could be convicted, Trump could be in jail, and he might, but he's still going to be the nominee. And I just do worry a little bit about the general election because I don't know. We all lived through 2020, and I just don't see any way that with a 33% approval rating, Joe Biden could win re-election. But let me just say, stranger things have happened.
Right, like O.J. being O.J. Simpson, right? I didn't think there was a way that he could be found innocent. So looking ahead at the general election, because let's just assume that Trump is going to be the Republican Party candidate, which I believe, no matter what happens, whether he's in handcuffs or not, I find it hard to believe that America will vote for Joe Biden, except the far leftist element of the Democrat Party. I don't see how America could vote for Joe Biden at this point. What do you say to that?
No, that's what I'm saying. I mean, it's constant approval rating is now it's the 33%, and no matter how many times he tries to tell the stupid, dumb, blank American people how stupid and dumb blank they are, and they better realize how well off they're doing economically. He's at 33%, the economy, and he's about the same on how he handles immigration and foreign policy and everything else. And then you got Kamala, who, if Joe Biden, God forbid, is reelected, the likelihood, I'm not saying he's going to die, but the likelihood that he'll be able to do 4 more years is very, very, very thin. So you're not only voting for Joe Biden, you're voting for the laughing hyena who can't put words together, who's really not that bright at all. And I know I'm only saying that because she's a woman of color and a female, but but nonetheless, that's a scary, scary thought to have them. And look, you say the left wing, the extreme left wing of the party, they might not vote for Trump, but I don't know right now, unless Biden really turns on Israel and starts propping up and having the head of Hamas over to the White House, I think he's going to lose a whole bunch of those people too, Biden.
I think the two biggest issues, if you take the economy out of the picture, which all elections, I guess, come down to the economy at the time in some sense. But if you take that out of the picture, the two biggest issues I see Trump having on his side are, once again, the border, which is what drove him into office in the first place in 2016, but also the growing globalism influence in America, which we're seeing in part from Davos, which is their normal murmurings how America needs to bow down to the United Nations and its agenda and so forth. So given that, what else do you see Trump having on his side right now? And how important is the border and globalism?
Oh, well, I mean, if I was any indication, and look, it's not necessarily an indication because we could go back to 2016 when Ted Cruz beat Trump in Iowa.
Yes.
Rick Santorum. He won Iowa, and he beat Romney, and then we have Huckabee, who beat McCain. So it's not necessarily a bellwether indicator here. But look, I just think that everything you mentioned is so important because in Iowa, the polls showed immigration is like almost at the top of the list. This is such a look. The Republicans have winning issue after winning issue after winning issue. And they don't often capitalize on it. I don't know what they're about to do on this immigration compromise, but I liked it when they stood up and said, we will when they went to the border and the speaker was there, and they said, we will shut down the government if we don't get what we want on immigration. And they're not getting what they wanted on immigration, and they're not going to shut down the government. They don't get it. They should take lessons from the Democrats. Because the Democrats know how to stick together. They know what to do. They don't budge. And the Republicans cave. But Trump doesn't cave. That's the thing. Trump doesn't cave. Now, I just think that on immigration and on the economy, like you said, and on, look how he trashed the United Nations. And look what he did. He cut off funding to so many UN groups.
Yep.
I think he would really consider, although I don't know if it would ever happen, pulling us out of the United Nations. And he got us out of world treaties, the climate treaty and all that stuff. So he's not afraid to take on head-on the globalists and what they want to do to this country. MAGA, America First. Joe Biden has made it into an evil empire. MAGA people. Well, that's a basket full of deplorables in another language.
Yep.
It's the same thing. It's half the country, and they despise that half of the country. And it's so dangerous. Cheryl, if the Democrats, God forbid, just theoretically speaking, if they had 60 votes in the Senate and the House and the presidency, this country would be over. They would have 2 more states, Puerto Rico and Washington, D.C., 4 more Democrat senators, stack the Supreme Court, no more electoral college, and the list goes on and on and on. We can't have that happen.
So let's talk about strategy for Donald Trump when it comes time to picking his VP candidate. The Republican Party does not have the problem the Democrat Party does with not having many candidates to choose from. We have a deep bench, right? There are tons of people that come to mind that I can think of who would be great VP picks for Donald Trump and extending that as part of his cabinet. Who do you see being crucial, strategically speaking, for his VP pick?
That's a great question. I mean, because when you talk about the names that have been bandied about, everybody from, Nikki Haley, who is in this love-hate relationship with Trump, and she had said, recently that she doesn't want it, and he has trashed her pretty good. Although I think she'd make to be honest with you, I think she'd make a great vice president, and I think he'd be smart to pick her, and I'll tell you why. Now, I'm not a fan of her globalist connections and all that, but getting beyond that, when you look at the polls head to head against Biden, she wins very, very easily nationally over Biden. So I think she'd be a plus for his ticket with her foreign policy experience and everything else. And could you imagine, Cheryl? I mean, I would pay for this. Could you imagine a debate, not that we'd ever see it probably, but between Kamala Harris and Nikki Haley? Can you imagine that? Oh my God! I can't even think of it. But of course, Nikki Haley is unlikely, unfortunately. I don't think Ramaswamy, who's now, best friends with Trump, we saw that yesterday in New Hampshire. I don't think he's the person. We've heard Tucker Carlson, who is definitely, you could love Tucker on TV as I did, but he's not the person, certainly. I think if it's not going to be Nikki, I think he's going to go female, and I don't think Lake is the person. I think the governor, Noem,
Kristi Noem,
yeah,
South Dakota.
I think she's kind of not even a dark horse. I mean, she's been talked about as possibly being the one. I just hope he picks someone with gravitas and someone who could handle themselves and someone who's vetted. You don't need somebody who's, who's got a lot of baggage, whether it's affairs or anything else. I know that sounds terrible to say, and I'm not talking about her necessarily, just anybody. Like you said, it's a wide field, but I think Haley would be just such a winner for the ticket.
So first off, let me say that that's very interesting you say Nikki Haley, because you are about the only other conservative I've spoken with who still has, like I do, some sort of respect and admiration for Nikki Haley. Most conservatives that I've spoken with or read their opinions online detest Nikki Haley at this point, and I see her in the same light as you just outlined. But let me throw one other name out there, Sarah Huckabee Sanders.
Yeah, you need somebody, as I say this, we have Kamala Harris waiting to do this, but you need somebody who's, again, has got gravitas. I just don't think she has the gravitas. I think she's way too young and inexperienced, quite frankly. She just started as the governor. She was his spokesman. I just don't see it. I don't think it'll fly, and I don't think she widens the appeal. Like, if you put her up now, and I know the campaign has a long way to go, and you learn a lot about a person, but if you put her name out there now against Joe Biden, I don't think she would register.
It is going to be very interesting to see who Trump picks, because there are so many good candidates out there. Democrats, do you think that they're going to actually stick with Joe Biden? To be honest, I'm still not of the mind that they are not going to run Joe Biden as their candidate. He's perfect. He's the puppet. But a lot of people think that I'm wrong on that. What do you say?
I just, the more time goes on, the more I think that maybe he will be the one. However, if Obama, who I agree, you're right, Biden is the puppet, and Barack Obama, in my opinion, has been running things from the get-go.
Yes.
He told people to drop out of the primaries. He picked Kamala Harris. He picked Biden. He's in charge. And he said on TV on a late-night show in November after Biden won that the third term for him, since he can't have one, would look like he'd be in a basement somewhere with a walkie-talkie. That's dating me, huh? And someone would be in the Oval Office with an earpiece. Well, that's exactly what's happening. So, if anything, Biden could be in till the convention, and then right before the convention say, oh, my health or this or that, and drop out. They'd have to convince him or threaten him or something, and then bring in Michelle.
Oh gosh.
Bring in Michelle, because puppet. That's a puppet that doesn't need strings. That's Obama. That's direct to Obama. So I just don't see how it could be him, and I don't see how they could have anything to do with Kamala Harris and expect to win.
So,
having said that, I'll say again, and I don't even know what it means, we all live through 2020.
So let's talk about Michelle Obama. Let's just wrap up because I know our time is pretty much at an end. But Gavin Newsom is the other candidate that the Democrats like to whisper out too. But let's talk about Michelle Obama facing off against Donald Trump. I truly believe that she would be the one candidate who would drive out the undecideds to vote for the Democrat Party because they want to be part of that history, right? The historical vote for a woman president. And she would be the one who could actually beat Donald Trump, sadly. What do you say to that?
Yeah, I mean, it's possible. All of a sudden you have women voters, you have some independents, you have, again, what does she know, though? What's her experience? Is she qualified to be president of the United States? Maybe they make Gavin Newsom the candidate, put her as vice president. I don't know. I don't trust them. I just know they have a plan, and I just can't. I'm with you. I just don't see. I think I'm with you. I just don't see how it could be Biden. I don't see how that plan could be Biden. I mean, the guy can't. God bless him. It's not his fault, but he can't find his way off a stage. He doesn't know where he is. No, literally. And you know who I blame? Jill Biden.
Yes.
I blame Jill Biden. To me, she's a selfish, self-absorbed, not too intelligent. See, you say Broadway, and then she compares Latinos to tacos, and she calls bodegas. I mean, can you imagine if Melania did that and stuff like that? Forget it. So anyway, I blame Jill Biden. She should be interested in her husband, not in her ability to be first lady and live the good life of a first lady. Yeah,
it's not a very good wife to allow your husband to go out there so publicly and be so mocked, right?
Yeah, You would think.
Well, Steve Malzberg, I want to thank you so much for being on Bold and Blunt. You're going to have to come back so we can discuss more politics, maybe after New Hampshire and the campaign gets into full swing, yes?
Anytime, Cheryl, anytime.
All right, thank you so much. Thank you for listening. I want to remind you, if you like Bold and Blunt, you may get Bold and Blunt at edify.app, at washingtontimes.com, at Real Life Network, and wherever podcasts are offered. Tune in next time, and in the meanwhile, don't forget, stay blunt, stay bold.